Chef Dev, along with
Talk about it amongst America.
Pastor Archie.
But we also want to talk about it amongst ourselves because we are the model.
And we discuss topics and how they get to a certain tipping point.
So if we do well,
KCPZ, Praise 95.3.
then things tip toward the godly way. If we don't do well, things tip towards a satanic way.
And so our objective is to look at where we're at and really discuss some issues and how we can move things.
To another episode of The Tipping Point with Chef Dev and Pastor Archie. How's it going, Pastor?
It's good, slippery, chilly. But
Very slippery. I fell this morning.
I didn't.
I bounced back.
I've fallen enough in my lifetime, so I should be able to control it now. Right?
Yeah. That's what's up. That's what's up. So how's everything going?
It's going good, man. It's been busy. This is a busy season. It's always a challenging season for me, but it's going good.
That's what's up. That's what's up. Well, what do we got? We've been talking about the results, the election results, the last couple of weeks from the big day, and we've talked about how Trump being elect, what's going to change, how it's going to change for the better, for the worse. We talked about everything from just community uprising and division or peace, and we've talked about the economical impact. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, I think we still got to continue the conversation. I think there's a couple of things that we have to that are hot news. I think we got to talk about the outcome of the roof case, and then we haven't heard anything else about the police officer who I use the term murdered. The man who was running away from him.
Yeah.
Because we haven't heard anything about retrying the guy or anything else. We just know it was on jury. And some of the policies that are being forwarded are things that we got to think about. There's a couple of Kansas City issues that I think are important. One of them being, should the governor appoint people to the police commission in Kansas City? I mean, that's
as opposed to
having the city council do it.
So let's start there. So, the city council is the one that has supposed to have been electing the commissioner.
Well, actually, here's what happens. The city council is responsible for local control.
Okay.
And so local control, if we say that the city controls itself under the mayor, we have a two-pronged leadership. And one of them is you have a council who's been elected by the people, and then you have a mayor that's been elected by the people.
Okay.
And so it would seem like the people who would know best about who might serve to be positively effective in governing our police policy, it would be the people who live here.
Okay.
The governor is far away, and I think the other issue is the governor is elected by a broader scope of people who might not feel the same way about Kansas City as the people who live in Kansas City.
Gotcha.
And
so he will appoint rules or policies.
He'll
appoint a commissioner.
The policymakers.
The policymakers
So
that will make policies
right.
that have nothing to do with us.
Right. Well, they'll make policies. They're supposed to make policies that have to do with us. And the appointments haven't been bad. I think the question now comes up whenever you have a democratically focused mayor.
Okay.
And then you have a Republican incoming governor.
Okay.
Then that means that governor can make appointments that might not be as supportive to the mayor.
So I thought the mayor was the one that was supposed to do that.
Well, in some cities,
Okay.
it's much more locally managed.
Gotcha. But because of Kansas City's rich history.
yeah. I have a lot of speculation about how it ended up this way, but
Well, I thought it was because with the mafia being corrupt, you can pay off cops on the local level, so you have to reach beyond the local level to appoint people to where they're.
I mean, it would be great to think that was the motive.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying it's not.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I've there's so many streams of theories
Gotcha.
about how we ended up that way, but you got to remember that we were a segregated state at one point. And you know, if you guard the borders, you'd be guarding Kansas City because it's the state border to Kansas, and Illinois border, you board in St. Louis. And so you had Chicago, which was a pretty black state, and Kansas, which was a pretty fairly black state.
Gotcha.
And so now, when you, and Kansas was kind of really, it was an Indian-based state. There was a lot of things that was happening in Kansas. It was pretty diverse. It really had the opportunity to be a great, if it had kind of taken advantage of its diversity, then it would have been, they would be in a very different place right now. Right now, they have some real economic issues that are happening in the state.
I'm surprised to hear you say Kansas was a black state.
Well, I would say that's why I switched it to diverse. But yeah, Kansas, you had good diversity there. You had a lot of Indian because there was a lot of Indian reservations that were kind of recognized them in there. So you had a heavy Indian population, and then you had black population. But how do you think Kansas City and St. Louis came to be the primary black states? Because once you let slavery cities, you let once you free the slaves,
most of them just here chilling.
well, most of them come from the other states. Because at first, if this was not a free state, then you would cross here, but you wouldn't stay here.
Gotcha.
And so you had the Missouri River, everything, that's where you got jobs, the railroads and the river. And so therefore, since everything came down the river, then you would work down there, but you wouldn't cross the state line and come over here unless you were passing through. Once they said, that Kansas City that Missouri was a free state, and that means all the blacks that had piled up against the border of St. Louis and Illinois, and the ones at the border in Kansas.
Gotcha. Then they came into Missouri.
And so you created two primarily urban states.
Gotcha.
I mean cities.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so now, the issue then becomes, can the state control those? And so some theories are that that's a way of managing state control.
That's interesting. And I wasn't keeping up locally. Now, Brownback, is that the guy? No, that's Kansas.
In Kansas.
Okay, Missouri is.
We have an incoming, I forget his name right offhand, but we have an incoming Republican governor.
Okay.
And so,
he's replacing McCaskill.
no, he's replacing,
I'm all wrong.
So,
I think that's.
we had 8 years of, I don't know, I worked a lot with this guy. I feel bad that I don't remember his name, but I chalk it up to 8.
So there's nothing that he's gonna. So he's not really. He doesn't have the inner city's interest at heart, or he's not thinking about it when he's gonna appoint the commission. Basically.
Well, I would say this clearly: he doesn't need the voice of the inner city as some of the others had.
Okay, and why would you say he doesn't need it? Because he doesn't care about it. And he has
because he has. Well, I mean, it's the same reason why Trump didn't need it. Trump didn't, because you have such a passionate push at this point for returning to policies that were adjusted to benefit minorities. So you want to return to policies that were adjusted. The policies at one point were adjusted for our benefit. You want to return to what they were prior to that adjustment.
Sound like Jim Crow.
And so, there's, I've pointed back to Jim Crow. Now, here's the one thing, there's a great work that's out right now that talks about the new Jim Crow. And the new Jim Crow, and he talks about the mass incarceration and things of that nature. In fact, if you have Netflix, anybody who have Netflix, go to your Netflix, and there's a documentary called 13. And my suggestion is, look at 13, because here's the whole premise of 13. It's talking about one of the statement in the amendments that says that freedom was
given to
everybody.
But blacks, because
but it was saying freedom was given to anybody, but what it did was the rights that limited your citizenship under slavery, when they gave them to you under slavery,
Gave them to you as
They
property.
made exceptions under under crime, criminal elements. So in other words, I can't make you a slave, and I can't take away your freedom unless I can label you
As a
in the
criminal.
criminal system.
And that's why we have all these high,
And so-
these.
And so, if you follow the 13, it talks about how intentional decisions were made often to ensure, all the way back to Nixon, to ensure that there was
a
a
criminal
way to have slaves, even when freedom was granted.
and that's why you have these non-violent drug offenders that's getting life in prison, because that was a way. And then they only mandated it on crack because that's a inner city epidemic versus
Right.
cocaine, which is a suburban thing.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So
And so, yeah, that's kind of what we.
that's I've ran across that, and I don't know. I just wasn't in the mood to watch it. That kind of stuff made me mad.
Oh, you ran across 13? You seen it?
We put it on.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't watch it though.
And it's a documentary. We'll make you mad.
It just
But
makes
it's
me angry, man. It takes me out of my element of being kingdom minded. You know what I'm saying? It takes me in my anger and all that. So this is a very, very, and I love it. I think we're not afraid to say what's on our mind and talk about the issues when it comes to diversity and race and bigotry and so forth and so on that we have to deal with, all while being in the kingdom. But what do you say to somebody, some of our white brothers in the kingdom that say, hey man, I don't know what you guys are talking about. This is the greatest country in America. There's none of that happening.
Well, I think first of all, I think this is the greatest country in the world.
But you look at the world,
You said America,
okay,
yeah.
yeah, you know what I mean.
But I think that if I lived in, if I lived in a place where there was clear persecution,
Yeah.
and I was middle class in the persecution in the social structure, so that I didn't get all the persecution that other people got, then even though it's a place where persecution takes place, it might still be the best place to be at that point. And so I think America is such to where they say, well, look, we believe in democracy, because here's kind of what that suggests is that I am anti-America because I want America to be better. It suggests that that first of all, where we are cannot be improved. I think that this can be the best country in the world because we believe in democracy. Or it suggests that I don't believe in democracy. Now, my argument to folks who say just leave it alone is that you really don't believe in democracy, you don't believe in the whole ideology that really supports that we're equal as people. You don't believe in the true essence of capitalism. You go on and on and on and on. And so there's a lot of things I would argue with a person who says everything is great the way it is, because these ideas that we are trying to push toward are hindered by, scars and things of that nature. Like, for example, you believe the freedom of the press, but then you support an unfair press. I listen now to many of my white friends who now talk about how bad the media is. And blacks have been talking about how biased the media is forever. But now that they're telling the truth about Donald Trump, and sometimes they're telling lies about Donald Trump, whatever it is. But now that your candidate is suffering what we have already suffered. But it's the same thing. When people complain about political correct, and I'm thinking, what do you think we've had to do with? Political correctness is not new to us. This is the way we've had to live. We've had to be correct for you and real in our own communities forever. And so now that you have to live like us, it goes back to what a senator told me once, is that if you guys eat, if we eat steak, you can have chicken, but if we gotta eat chicken, you ain't getting nothing. In other words, what his point was is no matter what policies you offer down the line, we need to be able to see a demonstrated intentional advantage over the rest of y'all. And if you take some of our advantage away, then we're gonna make sure
Yeah.
that you get worse.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree. That's the part that angers me. You know what I'm saying? When you're talking about the justice system, because I see that happening in the justice system. We can give y'all bad.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to give y'all worse. We'll get bad, but we're going to make whatever it is worse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you going to get murdered, that's worse, but we're going to get manslaughter. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like there's no way that you're going to have the advantage over me in any situation. And I can kill somebody the same as you. You're going to get murdered. I'm going to get manslaughter. And I think that's just the nature of America, man. And so you will have pro-black people that talk about, I think it's the 14th Amendment. I don't quote me because I'm not into all that. But the 14th Amendment that says when the Constitution was written, if something was written, and talk about liberty and freedom, at the point we weren't even considered people. So those rights weren't afforded to us. We were considered property. And the liberty and freedom is for the white man because we weren't even people at the time. Something to that.
Well, I think that the discussion around that was this. The argument was when they came up with the Electoral College, in order to get a president, you're trying to unite these states,
Mm-hmm.
then you had to come up with a way to balance the vote. Because you had the popular vote versus the Electoral College. So the Electoral College really kind of won over. But part of the argument was that you guys have a lot of people who, if we just count people, then the people that you have, a lot of those people are not really people, they're property.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. Even if all blacks were considered people at that time, like we were still a minority.
Right, but if you considered them all the blacks people, then that means you would have more representatives at the state, at the Senate, more representatives at the House.
Oh, that were actually black.
No, they wouldn't have to be black.
Uh-huh.
But the whites who had like for example, if you said don't count them because they are property,
Mm-hmm.
they have no human value to us.
Mm-hmm.
They're like cattle. And then you also said, but when you do a census and count the number of people that I need to have
Mm-hmm.
sitting at the legislature,
Mm-hmm.
then I count them then. So let's suppose.
So you're saying
it's 5 in my family,
Uh-huh.
but I got 100 slaves. Okay, so now when the legislature goes in and says, how many people do you need at the Senate to represent your city or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say I got 105, and then I say, okay, well when we tax you or when we do any of those kind of things, how many people you got? You say I got 5.
Mm-hmm.
And so you said, so you got all those other people.
Mm-hmm.
You either need to label on property, and they don't count,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't make them count when it's your advantage,
Yeah.
and then not count them when it's
Well,
not.
but this is what I'm saying. You were speaking about the popular vote versus the electoral. So even if the slaves were people, they could all vote, and we're still the minority, so their vote would have never went through anyway. That's what I'm saying.
Well,
So why-
there's a couple of things that you're talking about. Well, the Electoral College came out of that argument, but part of the issue is also, like the president is limited by the Congress and the Senate in some ways. Okay, and so if you have more representation, like how big your state is going to determine how much representation you have, how many seats you get
Gotcha.
at each one of those places.
Okay.
So therefore, if you had a state that was heavily populated,
Yeah.
so the argument is: do you go by land, or do you go? See, all of that discussion around: do you go by land or do you go by people? Because you got a small land with a lot of people, but if you got farming, you had fewer people more land. And then the other question is if you have plantations, you got a lot of people working those plantations.
Gotcha. So if you had a whole bunch of slaves in one area, that means you need more representation that made up the electoral votes in that state.
That made up.
The reason Florida's small, but it's got so many people, so that's why it's 55 electoral votes.
Yeah, it had more electoral votes. Yeah.
Yeah.
It ended up being electoral votes, but the argument was how many votes do you get? But the first part of the argument really was how many seats do you get in the Congress and at the Senate?
Oh.
And then they were like, okay, well, what about voting? You vote for the president. So when you're talking about, they were talking about all three branches of government and trying to figure out how to make this thing balance. And so, so what happened is, you know, some of the slave owners wanted to say, when it mattered, these are people. When it was to my advantage, the other way, these are property. And so what they did was they compromised and made them 2/3 people.
Oh, wow.
And so now
Thank you,
wasn't about
we appreciate it.
Yeah, it wasn't about their right to vote or not to vote. It was really about whether, because that wasn't even consideration.
It's almost like filing taxes.
Yeah, I mean that wasn't even consideration. I mean it wasn't like, well, they're gonna vote, they're not gonna vote. That wasn't even an issue.
Yeah.
The issue is whether or not they counted as property, or whether they counted as.
Speaking of, when is the House, the Senate, or the Congress? Who's going to mandate the time that people spend on in them seats? How does that happen? Because that's the problem. The president ain't the problem.
Well, I think that there's always an argument of term limits, and if you have states that have a lot of people, then the term limits. I'm just saying this anecdotally. In other words, I haven't researched this, but if you have where you have a lot of if you have term limits in some states, in some places, then it's not going to be, some districts, it's not going to be favorable because of the number of people in those districts. They have a lot of land, don't have a lot of people. And so if they have a person that they bring in and they become a significant person, then it's usually, you put a good person there, they represent you, and then you go on and on. If you have a place like Florida, or we got a lot of people, Los Angeles, we got a lot of people, then the term limits might be reasonable because the pool that you have to pick from is a lot different. You got a big diverse group of people, you have a lot of other things.
Yeah, you know, just thinking about this stuff just gives me a headache. Like, you know what I'm saying? Especially when I feel like the system is too far gone to me, in my eyes. Maybe because the only how I gauge things is by effectiveness. Like, I think the way the country is going or has been is too far gone for anybody today to make a difference.
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
To me,
it just is what it is to me.
Now I take a biblical lens to that.
Okay.
Whenever something is too far gone,
Yeah.
if you look at the characteristic of God, then the options go away.
Got you.
So if you look at Sodom and Gomorrah, it's too far gone. Can't find 10, I can't change it. So get rid
So
of it.
let's just burn it up.
You know, Jonah, Noah. Can't find nobody help you build that boat. Ain't gonna be no space for them on the boat. It was interesting. You tell them how big the boat needs to be. Now, what if he would have been evangelistically effective? You know, what if 1 million people would have said, we're gonna help you build the boat. Then the boat size would have had to change drastically. So when he told you to start building the boat, you already knew.
Yeah, everybody ain't gonna be able to. So it's like it's by design that he said it needs to be this big, because I know ain't nobody.
Ain't nobody coming.
Ain't nobody coming.
Right.
I got you.
And so
us as the kingdom.
yeah, so the question is when the kingdom, so the sustainability of a nation, it is based on the probability or possibility of kingdom influence without God coming down and just making it happen. And so, you know, yeah, I think if we, in many ways, if God can't find 10, then he destroys the city.
So, me thinking of putting my kingdom hat on, so, and that's why I always have the theory, with everything going on, if the Lord already gave us our marching orders, which is to make disciples, he didn't necessarily say, change what's happening. He just said, hey, this is going to happen. It's inevitable. While it's happening, I need you all to go and therefore make disciples. So why do we spend so much time analyzing it and trying to change it?
Well, I think that there's a couple of things. First of all, I think what God wants, because Jesus gave us an outline of what the kingdom influence needs to look like.
Okay.
And justice and all those kind of things are part of that influence. And so we fight for things that are righteous because because Jesus said do it. And then the other reason why we fight, because in the soil that you're in determines how the seed's going to grow. And so trying to get a bunch of people saved and all that kind of stuff, and then just leaving them means that you kind of kill the opportunity for fertilized ground.
Well, who said get them saved and leave them? What about get them saved and disciple them so they can hop on board with the kingdom agenda and make more disciples, instead of trying to change this world that obviously is going in the direction of Sodom and Gomorrah, when he said, I'm just going to kill it all, right. and Noah, and we're just going to flood it all. I don't want you. You're going to try to go get people. They're not going to believe you. So just do what I told you to do. At what point are we just doing what the Lord said do, which is go ye therefore and make disciples?
Well, I think that he says, make disciples, teach them to observe all things that I've commanded you, and then you'll see the evidence of my presence. And so, because he said, Lo, I'm with you. Now, I think if you go back, if you try to make disciples and seed them in soil that is totally unrighteous, then what you're doing is you're killing the future disciple-making environment.
So you're saying make disciples spiritually, but the soil being in the physical culture.
We influence
and if we
the
don't
culture.
change the culture, then what's the point of making disciples?
Well, I'm saying that if you don't change the culture, then you have a progressively a much more progression, a greater progression of sin culture being developed around, and so therefore you'll have divorces everywhere. You have all those different kinds of. We wouldn't fight against that stuff. Then those things would be more prevalent. Now, the fact that we're not fighting against that stuff also means that our ideology seems strange to the culture, and so therefore it's harder to disciple kids. What the Bible talks about in Deuteronomy is create a culture around your kids. Where it says, speak to them when you get up in the morning, and it goes down that list of all the times when biblical truth ought to be evident to them. In Sodom and Gomorrah, he's talking about saving the city by, bringing forth a culture that was biblically consistent. You just go down the line, and what you see is on and on, there is a strong demand. In fact, in Jeremiah, where it says, the one people read, I have plans for you, and plans to be successful and all that kind of stuff. Then people read that without reading the context. The context of the passage is, he says, the land that I have you, that you're in exile to. In other words, the land that you're trapped in. What I want you to do is go in and build houses. I want you to buy land. I want you to marry. I want you to have children. In other words, I want you to influence the school district. I want you to sit on city councils. I want you to be an influence there. And then when they get a taste of what I have to offer, then you will find your benefit there. But to the degree that you are isolated, then you're because you're praying that I enhance and improve the culture. Yeah. And yet you want to be able to stay the same. And
it's not like we don't want it to stay the same. I'm sure Noah didn't want people not to help him. You know what I'm saying?
Right, but I think the
people to help him.
The recognition, because there were some people that preceded Noah.
Okay.
And so the problem is the recognition of Noah, that the culture was that bad, means that there was a gradual deterioration to the point where God found one person. Abraham. We don't hear about the destruction of Abraham, but God says, I can't grow you in that seed, in that soil. Yeah. So he says, so get you, your family and stuff, and I need you to go out and start all over again. And then he says, what about my people? He says, I'm going to make you the nation. And so I need a culture that is patterned after you, because we just can't grow in that soil. Joseph.
So the Lord hasn't said we can't grow in the soil yet, because basically it's
like you might find 10 people, theoretically, when you use that, talking about Sodom and Gomorrah, So I've had 10, so we found 10. But if we only have 10, then that means if one died,
then the Lord's like, I can't deal with it no more.
And if, even if you look at just in every environment, the soil that we churn makes all the difference. That's why he refers to us as salt and light. Okay. If you're not making a difference and the flavor's not changing, nothing's being preserved, then you are insignificant, in fact. And so I just throw the salt shaker away and start all over again.
Wow. I got you. You listening to the Tipping Point, Chef Devin, Pastor Archie. We, I guess you could say we're being cohesive when we talking about today's world and theology, and that's where I be at. That's why it's hard for me to watch stuff like 13 because I'm gonna be either off or on. You know what I'm saying? I can't look at 13. I can try to look at it and put it in a kingdom perspective, but it's probably not. I'm not there yet. You know what I'm saying? I get angry and I'll be like, yo, that's why I'm gonna do this and do this. You know what I'm saying? But I think.
But let me ask this question. Okay, so I come from gang life.
Yeah.
So in gang life, you put strategies, policies. You didn't call them this, but you put strategies, policies, principles.
You have the codes.
That would drive things toward your advantage. It was an unjust advantage, but you wanted things to be favorable. You wanted them to be your way, and things like if you start improving the community, then we tag it up. Yeah, because we don't want new developers coming in here because it's hard to sell drugs. Yeah, it's hard to sell drugs when you got developing community. You know, if you had an old vacant house, you break the window. When you break the window, then that means drug dealers don't mind coming down there. Good people stay away. I mean, you constantly try to make things, move things towards your direction. Because now, if you ask me, did you believe I was doing bad things? I was like, well, no, I was just kind of getting mine. I mean, I was doing what I felt was best for me at the time. Yeah. And so I wasn't doing it against other people. Yeah. Like it wasn't like if I stole your VCR, I didn't steal your VCR because I didn't want you to watch movies.
That's totally I did
right, yeah. And so really it was like you just don't like these people. No, I ain't got nothing to do with it. It was like if you come in my yard, my dog will bite you. It's nothing personal. You just bite people in the yard.
So I hear that, and I hear that argument. But if I'm a Crip, and then a blood moves into my neighborhood, I don't like him. So I'm gonna steal his VCR because of how I feel about him because of what he reps. That's how I feel America was. America hasn't liked black people. So when I see them stealing our VCR now, it's personal.
Well, see, I think that I would disagree in this case. I think that if you are a Crip, then you are second generation. So what you're doing is what your parents did. Okay. And so what Crip blood stuff kicked in during my generation, right? So therefore, the stuff that we did was a way to put policy in place to ensure that as integration was happening and development was happening a certain way, then that's the way it was. Gangs and stuff really kind of started by the blocks that you lived on. Yeah. And so when you start giving people the freedom to be able to move outside of segregated space, then how do you begin to kind of expand your reach? How do you begin to gain more territory? And how do you claim the territory that you gain? Yeah. And so, because if the blood that you don't like, he moves into neighborhoods like, man, I'm gonna change my claim. I'm gonna come to y'all set and diss my boys, and I'm coming y'all way because I believe that this is what's up. And then all of a sudden you're feeling about that person. You don't know him.
Yeah, he's not authentic though. I'm good. You stay over there, partner. You know what I'm saying?
I didn't know about y'all.
Yeah.
So now I know about y'all. So I feel like where I'm coming from was not authentic. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Born into it. So, but my point is that the dislike is based on the clothes he wears. And so, I just don't remember people sitting around saying, man, we're going to steal his car radio. It was a big deal once upon a time. Stealing car radios. Because, everybody had, you might not remember these times, but everybody had an AM radio. And so when FM came out, everybody was there. And so,
we got a little bit of that going on today.
So people were running around stealing people's cars, stealing people's radio out of the car. Yeah. That was a big deal. And so, but I don't remember sitting with anybody saying, man, we're going to steal his radio. Because we just don't want him enjoying music in their car.
But yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's a different generation. Because when we targeted cats, it was like, yo, he getting it over there. You know, my generation that is. I was never targeting cats, but
Mm-hmm.
if it, you know, and I think that's where haterade came from. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you a hater when you see somebody getting it and you want to stop him from getting it. You know
Yeah,
what I'm saying?
that wouldn't, it really, if you found a way to get it and not hinder what I was getting, have your own. But whenever you start tipping into my territory, those were the territory guidelines
Yeah.
of gang life during that period of time. Because we started off geographic.
Gotcha.
Because, you know, with segregation, we
Still a little bit of that.
Yeah.
A little bit of that. Even in the city, certain hoods is certain
Third
groups,
Ninth
certain
Street
look,
versus
you know what I'm saying?
yeah. And so, so I think, but the point is that the what stimulates the hate seems like when I can't get the advantage that I need, at least in our generation.
Mm-hmm.
I can't get the advantage that I want because you're in the way, or if I can profit, you know, from you, or like I'll give you a little bit, but if I can profit from you, so like if I'm selling drugs and I get this little kid to come around, and I'm like, dude, deliver these drugs down there. Well, I'm not gonna split it with you. You're not a partner. I mean, you doing all the running, and I'm gonna come up and I'm gonna pay you a little bit. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
so I guess my point is this: all the things that we see, like in 13 and all this different kind of stuff, it's human ideology. It is the fall of man.
Yeah.
More than it is the color of their skin.
I hear you. I don't know. I guess I could. Okay. I don't know, man. It's just hard for me to believe that because, and not like I'm saying I want America to mess with somebody else, but it seemed like when it comes to black people, like there's other colors here that nobody gets treated like this. And I'm not a real, like I said, pro-black kind of, you know, but I mean, in the words of, you know, Umar Johnson, I mean, he said Mexicans don't get treated like this because there's a nation with a head behind Mexicans that there are consequences to America. Foreigners don't get treated like that. All these other people have ambassadorships.
Well,
you know, the Chinese, the Mexicans.
I mean, I would argue about this. Those folks don't guard. They don't guard Chinese that become Americans.
But there's a nation that will speak up because he was looking at it as a point of genocide.
I mean, I get what he's saying. I mean, I get the point, but I disagree with the point.
Okay.
Here's the thing. I think that what America has a problem with African Americans is because is our unwillingness to face America's true history.
No, us as black people understand it.
I'm talking about America. America.
And why is that though? Like they can keep y'all in chains. Like how
right.
why do they just want to? You know what I'm saying?
Like if you talk to white folks, and even if you talk to most of us who went to school, we don't know anything about when we had when they stopped the slave trade and they wanted to increase blacks. Then what they had was breeding camps.
Okay.
And in the breeding camp, you would take a healthy black man and a healthy black woman, blindfold them both, and then he would impregnate as many as possible. And so if he's a stud, you treated him like a dog. It's a stud. And so you keep him, you feed him, you make him work out, and then he may be. That's why I hate when African Americans use the word MF, because that's where it comes from. Because he may be sleeping with his mother, and often he was. If she was healthy, had him, and she remained in childbearing years while he grew up, and she usually had him when she was in her early teens, and she's producing kids, and he's a good stud. And so, just like you would with a dog, sometimes you re-stud back into the family. Well, that's what they did. And so, but that's not in the history books. You know, breeding camps of black people are not in the history books, and black people don't know about it. So, when you go back and say, these guys, these children out of wedlock, are a problem in Black America, and you don't see that in the history book. I mean, you don't see the historical foundation that stimulated that.
Let me ask you this:
Mm-hmm.
if, say, for the sake, we're gonna think like America does,
Mm-hmm.
we run this mug anyway. I don't care what I tell you; that's not gonna change your situation, Black people.
Mm-hmm.
So why not just say, look, and fess up to it? Like, I don't understand. If we run this anyway, I don't have a problem with telling you what I did. Why they continue to try to hide it?
Well, I think that, when you try to create an ideology, I remember when people used to tell me when I first started serving as a minister, people was like, oh, man, preachers, don't tell nobody about the past. And I was like, well, doesn't truth stand on its own? I mean, truth is just truth, right? Like whether it was, I don't own truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just exposing reality. And yes, I think I got to tell people that I used to be this way. And a lot of people disagree. Now, folks have used it to attack me. People have used it to lie on me. They've used it to try to say, slander me with stuff that I did when I was 17 and would never do now and all this kind of stuff. And the media enjoys that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think truth is just got to be true. And I think America just doesn't feel like exposing them. Like Germany talks about the truth of the Holocaust.
Mm-hmm.
We don't talk about our Holocaust. And so therefore, if you don't talk about it, then when legislators sit there, if you got a legislator that sit there and he doesn't know the true history of the development of America, then the policy is going to be based on the ideology that you presented when you left out the history.
And that's what I was getting at.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for one, I think that they don't want to address it because in their eyes it's not relevant. Like, I don't owe you an explanation, Black people. You are even blessed to be in our presence, kind of.
But I think that they know they owe you an explanation. They don't like the explanation they have to give you.
At what point does
when I gotta be polite to you? The joy of Donald Trump by many.
And I respect him for it because he doesn't hold his tongue.
He's not polite for you. But here's the deal. White people have always been able to tell the story the way they want to tell it. It has nothing to do with truth. They can tell the story about America, and it's in the history books all over. And you had to have a different book. Now, what a lot of folks don't recognize is that when we came in, we were growing up and we learned about the history of America, and then when Black history came in, it conflicted. So somebody wasn't telling the truth. And so now, we didn't say, we need to give you this other history because the first one lied.
Mm-hmm.
They was like, well, here's Black history, so they tried to limit it to a couple of inventors and a couple of civil rights folks, and we ain't gonna, because we don't want to change, but we already have this ideology. Right. So if I got a president who went all through, even if you graduated from Harvard, you never learned my history. You never learned the foundational history of the country. And so therefore, you're running the country based on false information.
So at what point does the tenured, more idealistic America die? And at what point and what generation, or if any generation of whites or America says, and don't get me wrong, there's people that I know that's, that will say in a minute, hey man, I see what's going on. A white person, hey man, I see it.
Right.
But when does the majority of America say, you know what I'm saying, what we did to y'all was wrong? How long does that take? Because right now we still got 80-year-olds in Congress. So I ain't got much longer.
Well, here's what I think that there's two things I would probably say. First, I'm going to give you the practical solution. The carnal solution is you got to correct the history books so that people who go through, because see, all the people who graduate now and going to college, when you give the right answer, when I had to give the right answer on my test, I was lying. When you talked about America and from Columbus all the way up to the most recent president.
Your right answer is a lie.
Right, yeah. The right answer is a lie. So
Christopher Columbus founded America.
Right, yeah. So this ideology is being indoctrinated all the way up through college. And so part of the problem is You got to be truthful about where we are. But here's I think, even if man was truthful, because of the depravity of mankind, you're still gonna have a deficient. You're gonna have a deficient truth somewhere along the way. I think that when the kingdom has the proper influence, then some of because the only way I can overcome my sin is to be in Christ, right? That takes place from an eternal perspective, spiritually, but also from a practical perspective.
So what happens, and I'm glad you said that, because I think that we've talked about this a little bit. You can only overcome your sins in Christ. Hallelujah. Thank you, Jesus.
Right.
But you still have white Christians that is still going to have the ideologies of the carnal.
But here's the problem. Here's the issue. Whenever I overcome my sin, like I may be prejudiced against gang members, prostitutes, or it may be somebody who I'm prejudiced against. I think I'm better than until I get saved. Now, when I get saved, even my own sin, which is part of my corrupt living, does not overcome what happened to me in that transformation. And so therefore, how I view you is not based on your carnal reality, but based on your creative reality. And so all of a sudden now, I may not have it all together, and I may not understand, like the white people who I hang around with, the Asians who I know, the Hispanics who I hang out with, we don't all have it together, and we don't know the factual information to make carnal life totally just and righteous. We argue and debate about stuff on a regular basis. But my love for them is almost like, like you say, blood is thicker than water. Well, the blood of Christ is thicker than water. And so therefore my connection with them it overcomes all of that, because I see a fellow soul that is connected with me, and I don't want bad things happening to them, no matter what. And so I think, like I have friends who are just still on a high because Trump was elected. And I'm telling them, I was like, look at the foreign challenges we face now. China just stole one of our drones.
Out the sky?
No, it was an underground drone, and it was underwater measuring sea depth. And when the people came out to get it, they brought in a battleship and confiscated it. Now, these are miniature acts of war that are starting to take place. You got the Russia and the hacking stuff. That'll probably be dealt with. You can deal with that. If you're reasonable, you deal with that in a diplomatic way. You kind of use sanctions and stuff like that to deal with that. But, if we get Donald Trump in, I don't know if he understands sanctions.
Bomb him.
And then you got... And then I think, like, it's simple things like, everybody defends it, but the United States had a policy, the one China policy. And to get in the conversation and to acknowledge Taiwan as independent from China is, we're
gonna have to. I'm sorry, Pastor. I know we just brought into it. We're gonna have to. We have to take a note, and let's get back on that next week, because that's something that.
Those are big deals.
Those are big deals. You know what I'm saying? And you're right, Donald Trump. We just blow him out of the sky.
And you can't divide America and start a war, because black folks are like, I ain't going.
Yeah.
You tell me you don't like me.
Yeah.
We fight for presidents that we love.
Yeah. So, well, you've been listening to The Tipping Point. Till next time. Wow.